Well, good afternoon, everyone. AFR is on your radio. I'm Jay Smith, and I'm joined here with Jason Price, and this is After Further Review. Jason, I know that this is going to be a new setting for us. I'm excited to get this show underway with you, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Jay. I'm just excited for this opportunity, ready to talk Ole Miss sports and everything beyond.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, hey, look, for those that don't know who I am, currently first-year graduate student here at Ole Miss, did my undergrad at Clemson, and actually was able to have this show for 3 years on the airwaves down in Tigertown in South Carolina. So we're continuing the tradition here in Oxford, Ole Miss. Super excited. Want to say thank you to everyone at Rebel Radio 92.1 for letting us come in and use their studio and have the opportunity here. Jason, though, let's get a little bit of background on you. You're a junior here, and you've been a part of the Student Media Center for a while.
That's right. I'm a junior here, and I am currently the sports director for Newswatch Ole Miss, which is the daily broadcast here in Oxford, Mississippi. Everything Ole Miss news and the nation, and basically just been working with the sports department since my freshman year there, and just excited to hop on the Rebel Radio airways and to grab a new audience and just talk about what I love talking about, man.
Well, I tell you what, man, we talked about this before we came on the show. You're going to be the Ole Miss sports expert for a little while. I still got to get my footing. I'm still new to Oxford, new to Mississippi, new to the Ole Miss sports landscape. And in the past, this show has primarily been college football centric, but we are definitely going to incorporate a lot of other sports, Ole Miss, and we're going to talk about some national headlines, just whatever happens to be going on this week in sports. We're going to mention it, but in the fall, one would assume, especially with Lane Kiffin.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, I'm just looking forward to the Twitter and the tweets that are going to come out in the fall, especially like I'd say late summer, around August, when practice is going on. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch Kiffin in his first year at the helm of a big-time SEC program now.
I mean, he's definitely he's been ready to step into this position as an SEC head coach ever since he was the offensive coordinator for Alabama. I mean, he had some time at Tennessee, had some time at USC as well, but I see him now as taking advantage of this opportunity, and I don't think he's going to let it go to waste whatsoever. I think he's going to have some really interesting things planned, and I think that he's also walking into a very interesting situation. I mean, a team with two starting quarterbacks. You never really know what's going to happen when Lane Kiffin shows up.
Well, and that's what I was going to say too. Is you look at Lane Kiffin, who he hasn't been in the SEC since when he was at Tennessee.
Yeah, since
right, head coach at Tennessee.
Right,
and then
as a head coach.
As a head coach, correct. Now he was at Alabama.
Right.
But the last head coaching gig he had was at Tennessee, which I believe, off the top of my head, was only a year.
Yeah, and I believe he was fired from there as well.
Yes. I don't remember his record at Tennessee, but there was a lot of drama that surrounded the program during his tenure there. I don't foresee that being the case here in Oxford. I think that the administration is going to give him at least a few years to kind of get his footing. But like you mentioned, you're coming in with basically two quarterbacks and a lot of uncertainty. Signing day was last week. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show, how Ole Miss did for signing day. But, coming in, my question is, for Lane Kiffin, is how does he reignite the spark around the football program? How does he get kids excited? Because let's be honest, and I don't have official numbers in front of me, but I think anybody who went to the games could tell you attendance was not great, and they're going to have to try and do something to get people in the stadium, packing the vault for the entire duration of the game. But what do you think he needs to do? Like, what's a realistic expectation? And honestly, you could apply this to not only Lane Kiffin at football, but you got to think about there's going to be a new volleyball coach in the fall. I think
we have a new softball coach this year.
There's a new softball coach. So what's a realistic expectation for Kiffin? Is he going to be content with a 6-6 season, or do you think he's sub 500? I mean, you'd have to pull up the Ole Miss schedule for football and see, who are they playing and who's a shot for them to beat.
Well, this coming up season, the first 7 games for Ole Miss is going to be a rough run. Within the first 5 games, or Within the first 7 games, 5 of those games are against LSU, Alabama. We have Florida, Auburn, and Baylor is our starting game in Houston, Texas next season. So if you're Lane Kiffin looking at that schedule, you know that there's already a lot of pressure on you coming from Florida Atlantic, where you won a conference championship yet again. There's already a lot of pressure, and when you see that starting schedule, that could either make or break you, because if Ole Miss heads out of that schedule, out of those first 7 games, and we're looking at like a 5-2 or looking at a 6-1, dare I say it? I mean, that will absolutely light a fire underneath the Ole Miss fan base. So I think that for him, a reasonable expectation for him is to show that we're not going away. And there was a lot of games last season that we should have won.
Absolutely.
Like the California game.
Oh. To
start the season off, Memphis.
I mean, it was interesting that, because that was the point I was about to make, is that, look, even with last year, and I was only here for, I've only been here now, this, again, first year, so I don't know a lot about Matt Luke prior to getting, he was here for 3 or 4 years, I think, in total, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
I believe it was
it 4?
I think it was 3 years, because his first season he went 6-6. His overall record was 15-21.
Okay.
That was his overall record.
But even last year, the thing that got me was, with Ole Miss, there was talent, right? You had guys like Plumlee, and you had guys like, Scotty Phillips. Those are playmakers. Those are guys that are, dynamic. They can rally the team around them, and make plays. And look, we were all here for it. In last November, Ole Miss ran for 400 yards on LSU. I think they put up almost 500 or 600 yards of total offense. So we know that the ability is there. It was just like you talked about the Memphis game to start this season. I mean, 10-15.
Yeah, right.
How do you score 10 points with that offense? I mean, is that
against a group of 5 team?
Yes, and some will say, and it's legitimate, that Memphis has a great defense, and they do for a group of 5 team. You're absolutely correct.
Yes.
But you look at the Cal game. That was a loss, 28-20 at home. That was within their grasp, even in the final minutes. I think Texas A&M, 24-17.
For sure.
That was hard to swallow. I think the toughest game, though, and some people will point to LSU, but in the end, let's be honest, it was a 58-37 blowout, and LSU kind of ran away with it. It's Auburn.
Yes.
It's Auburn, and it was on the road. It's late in the season. You're at that point you are, what are you? You're 4. You had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 losses. You were 3-5, and you had the number 11 team in the country on the ropes at their home stadium, with the potential to go 4-5, and all of a sudden maybe a bowl game is a legitimate possibility. Instead, you drop that game, and I just personally, when I was watching that, I'm not going to say that it was the game that was the demise of Matt Luke, but it felt like all the wind just was gone out of the sails. I mean, it just took the life out of everyone, because they realized that they weren't going to make a bowl game.
Right.
They realized that Luke was probably going to get fired at the end of the season, and you were almost kind of searching for, like, where do you go from here? What do you do? Like, where's, because we just talked about it a minute ago. We can dive more in depth in it here in a minute, but look at their schedule for next year. LSU, Bama, Florida. I think you start with Baylor.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be tough, and I think that Auburn game, it would have been a huge building block for the program.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and the thing is, Ole Miss caught Auburn at the perfect time, just because Auburn was making so many mistakes at the beginning of the game. Yep. They missed 2 field goals right off the bat, and I mean, Ole Miss. I mean, that was the thing about our offense last season, is we could drive down the field, but whenever we would get to 3 and 10 inside their 40-yard line, that's whenever we would blow it, or honestly, the play call would just be not what we needed to get that first down.
Well, you talk about blowing it. Immediately, I think of the Egg Bowl, and I know it's still a sore. I know it's a sore spot. I know it is, because I was just sitting at home watching that game, and it sounds, it's terrible to say, but it was just like a perfect encapsulation of how the season went, because Ole Miss was in the position to win the game, to get some. I mean, yes, they weren't going to make a bowl game if they won this game, right? They were already out of bowl contention, but there was a possibility of just kind of, again, building blocks, foundation, that momentum. Would it have saved Luke's job?
See, that's the thing. I think that Ole Miss and Mississippi State, for that matter, care too much about the Egg Bowl, and a lot of times, because that's the reason that Matt Luke secured the job in the first place, was his 6-6 season, that 6th win that he won,
right.
Like that first season that he was the interim head coach. That 6th game that he won was against Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl, and that's why he kept his job. And I think it's sad to say, I think that if Ole Miss won the Egg Bowl, he would have kept his job, but I don't think he should have.
So you think that's because the Egg Bowl is big enough here, you felt like that if he would have been able to pull that out, and again, Ole Miss would have finished this season, it would have been 4-7?
It would have been 5-7.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Because
you're right. They're 4-8. You're right. So 5-7. Yeah, I can see that argument, but I just feel like after the Auburn game, everyone just kind of felt like, oh God. I mean, it was like back to square one. Now we'll see what Kiffin is able to do. Signing day was last week.
Right.
Ole Miss pulled in a top 40 recruiting class. What do you think of his job? Just as he went for a lot of guys that were in the transfer portal, which I thought was an interesting move. And whether or not that pays off, I guess remains to be seen. But you think it's wise to go after guys from phrasing it like this: instead of starting from scratch and recruiting guys into the program, he's pulling guys that have already been coached in different places. You agree with that move or disagree?
I think for this year, coming in so late as he did, and he didn't have that time to build relationships with the seniors in high school and the younger players, I think that's the smartest move that he could have made, was go ahead and getting those graduate transfers, or maybe people transferring out of, say, bigger schools, like if somebody transfers out of Alabama, or because they're not getting enough playing time, because obviously it's kind of hard to you got to be the best of the best to play at to get the starting position at schools like that. So I definitely understand the move he was making of going after graduate transfers and transfers in general, just because he didn't have that time to build the relationships with the seniors in high school. But I think that, and he said it after National Signing Day, he said a lot of coaches come up here and say that this is the best class that this school has ever seen, and this is a good class, but we will have better classes. Yeah. And I think as a Ole Miss fan, you can be excited to hear that, because you know that, we got a 4-star defensive end and a 4-star running back, and he said it's only going to come up from here. Yeah,
and I think, as long as you're able to develop that talent, because you can't just always look at the number of stars next to a guy's name. If you can develop that talent, then I think you have a lot of building blocks for a program, and hopefully Kiffin's career here is long and prosperous. Well, we're going to have to cut to a quick break. Before we do, though, I got to tell you about the guy that's about to join us on the show. First guest of the semester, Aaron Longe. He currently works as a GA over in marketing and fan experience in Ole Miss Athletics. He's going to join us here at the other side of this commercial break, talk to us about his experience, his time in Oxford and Ole Miss, and we look forward to hearing from him. But for now, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. Welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for tuning in on this Tuesday afternoon. Jay Smith here with Jason Price. This is After Further Review, and we are joined now by Aaron Longe.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good to see you, man. Good to see you.
Y'all too. Yeah, great to be here.
You're you're GA over in marketing and fan experience.
Yep. Second year GA over in marketing, fan experience, and athletic department. So just chugging along.
Tell me, I guess because full disclosure, Aaron and I both went to undergrad at Clemson. So that's where we met.
We did a couple of Tiger Town transplants over here in Oxford.
You're actually one of the reasons that I ended up here, which is another funny story that we'll save for another time. But you did this in undergrad, right?
Yeah. So kind of a lesser encompassing role. It was more of a show up, and
Right.
people, GAs in my position currently would say, hey, you're running like a floor mopper this game. So the basketball game, somebody falls down, you're the guy grabbing the mop, wiping the sweat off the floor kind of thing. Or you're going to be throwing T-shirts, kind of stuff like that. And now it's more transferred into you get to kind of plan like what T-shirts, just going off that specific example, like kind of what T-shirt kind of pertains to the game, when you want to throw it, all that kind of stuff. So it's a much more, obviously it's much more than T-shirts, but it's much more encompassing position.
Well, I think a lot of people don't fully understand or appreciate how much planning goes into what it is that y'all do, not just for the big ticket events like football and basketball and baseball. There's a lot of other things that y'all's department is responsible for on just like a daily basis.
Oh man, it's absolutely crazy. Any radio commercials you hear about season tickets, that kind of comes from our department.
Right.
Really kind of how strategically plan how we want to get the word out about Ole Miss and specifically athletics through baseball, football, basketball, men's or women's, and really where we want to, what avenues we want to pursue, and then how we want to pursue them. So it's a lot more than just showing up and running a game. It's a whole lot of behind the scenes as well.
So, like you talk about how much preparation comes into it, and we were talking before we came back on air that you were about to go run over to the basketball stadium for the game tonight. Can you give me just a little brief description of what you might do when you get there and how things might get set up, things like that?
Day in the life of Aaron Longe.
Oh man, how long is this segment? No, so I'll actually back this up to yesterday. So before every event, we don't just show up and hope everything works. We obviously we make all the not us specifically, but all the graphics, the video segments, what have you. We'll go in there. Games on a Tuesday. We'll go in there on a Monday afternoon, and Paris Buchanan, actually, my boss, is in charge of running the basketball games.
Okay.
And so does a stand-up job at it. And he's got a script where it's an Excel document, literally line by line. It is, with 38 minutes on the clock, we're going to run this video. That'll take 30 seconds. Now at 37:30, on the clock, we're going to have this PA sort of thing. So we'll go in there. If y'all are ever in the pavilion for lunch on a Monday afternoon or any day before a game, you can come in there and you can see things scrolling on the video board, and we're actually in the control room running through the game, making sure everything works properly, making sure everything is in its timely place where it needs to be. And again, that's just when you show up and do it. On the back end of that, Paris has to build all the scripts. He has to figure out really in his head where he wants this game to go so it can flow, just seem like a normal game, so you don't kind of sit in your seat and think, well, that didn't seem to really go there. Like I'm sure all of us have done at some sporting event in our life. So just through that, and then even today, it's helping make sure like all the giveaways are in the right place. Really, just everyone being in their position, ready for it, because clock starts 65 minutes out. So while the game starts at 6 o'clock, we're over there at like 4:45, actually starting our game. So it's
what sparked your interest in it originally? Did you want to be in sports or marketing, or did it just happen out of nowhere? Like, how did you fall into, because I feel like, especially the people that I've talked to before that are in any sort of athletics role, it's like once you get down that rabbit hole, you're in it,
there's
man.
no turning back.
Yes,
once
you're in it.
So no, it was mostly grew up playing sports, hockey, which is odd enough for the South. So
oh wow,
right. Shout out to Ole Miss hockey, just won the conference championship.
I saw that.
Right?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good for
Big
them.
deal.
Need to talk to Keith about getting them D1 or something like that over here and turn the Tad Pad into an ice rink.
Yeah, I saw that. That's a great idea. I'm down for it.
But I actually used to be the guy over at Clemson that would call alumni for money.
Okay.
And, that.
I haven't gotten a phone call from you yet.
Well, I'm not there anymore, so I've gotten several phone calls from them. But one of my friends actually was an accountant in the athletic department and said, hey, I think you would like this a little bit more, which, I mean, that turned into working as a student worker at Clemson, then worked minor league hockey team over in Greenville, the Swamp Rabbits, and then ended up coming to Ole Miss. So.
Well, tell me, so a few days ago, South Carolina, who we're familiar with.
Unfortunately.
Old rival. Yeah. South Carolina comes to town and play Ole Miss in basketball, and a certain VIP shows up, and I just so happen to be scrolling through Twitter and see that Morgan Freeman has got the picture of him at the game, and then you just happened to be in the background. Tell me, like, did you get him to sign anything? I mean, did you talk to him at all?
Always trying to act as professional as you can.
Right.
So it was mostly, I do MC the basketball games. So in order to get a lot of the bigger games, kind of the crowd hyped up, we'll do an Are You Ready, which we'll try and get somebody there from, like we had Morgan Freemanite, specifically South Carolina.
Sure.
Allie Davis, Kermit's daughter, is a really big fan of the program, so we'll get her in there hyping the crowd up a lot.
Awesome.
We've had previous players come back, and so I'll usually just get on there and do a quick little 15-second intro, try and get the crowd into it, make some noise, and then let the real star of the show take it away. So it was, but I will say Morgan Freeman was probably the top of the list so far.
Yeah, man, that's a really.
I don't know if you can beat that one.
No, I saw that and I was like, oh my God, that's Aaron standing right there next to Morgan Freeman. Well, I guess just to close, I mean, is there, obviously you hope to do this as a career.
Oh yeah.
After you graduate, that's the plan. But do you want to work in college athletics, or you want to go back to hockey? I mean, you're from Tennessee originally, so
yeah, big hockey state, right?
Yeah, it's a huge hockey state. Yeah.
Collegiate would be the end goal. There's just something about being on a college campus that, you felt it at Clemson. I'm sure you felt it at Ole Miss. That there's just something about being on a college campus, the traditions, the atmosphere. It's
in the South.
Especially in the South,
yeah,
yes.
I think in the South
it's unlike any other that you could possibly put your finger on. And while the Bills have their Bills Mafia tailgates and the Raiders have Raider Nation, just to name a few, there's something different being on a college campus. So college is the way for me.
And I just want to ask you a couple questions. So, number one, have you ever seen anyone actually get close to making that court-long putt? Has anyone actually gotten pretty close?
So the South Carolina game, actually, with Morgan Freeman in attendance. So for y'all that don't know what he's talking about, there's a full court putt, and if you sink it into a very small hole in a hole across the board, whatever I'm trying to say, the hole across the court. That's what we're trying to say.
There we
here,
go.
man.
We can picture it.
Yeah, you win a free car from one of our sponsors, and the South Carolina game, the guy putted it, and I was behind him going crazy. I thought he was going to make it, and it hit the corner of the board and bounced off at an angle. So, an eighth of an inch to the right, and he'd have sunk it, and him and I would have rode away into the sunset in his brand new car. And
wow.
Man, but I've seen people make the half-court shots for about $1,000, but I'm fingers crossed that car happens sometime soon, because this place will go wild if it does.
That would be really amazing. Yeah, man, I just, like I said, it's definitely a unique position. I don't think a lot of people really know what you do kind of exists, not only as a graduate assistant, but also as a student job. So, if there's people out there that are interested, they should definitely look into it.
With all that planning, throwing the wrench of class about once a day in there. So
that's
interesting for sure.
Eternal struggle, right? But hopefully, like you're about to graduate. So
in May, yeah.
Yeah, right? So knock on wood.
Yeah, I need all the wood to knock on over here.
So in May, you won't have to worry about class. I'm not sure what I was doing coming back for 2 more years. What?
About 2 years ago, I told myself, well, this is it. And here I am telling myself again, well, this is it as regard to class.
It's amazing because it was almost a year ago that I first reached out to, starting to come here. And it's just amazing to me if I'd told myself a year ago, this is where I'd be. I don't think I would have believed it. But anyway, hey, great to have you on, man. Really appreciate you coming by. Absolutely stop by anytime. Aaron Longe, look for you at the basketball games, right?
I'm the guy in the hat down on the court. Yeah. Backwards flat bill of all things.
All right, man. Appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, so we've talked a little bit about Lane Kiffin and his start here at Ole Miss. And, Jason, what do you think of not only – because there are some other things that we want to discuss today in addition to just football. We want to talk about basketball game that Aaron had mentioned earlier, Mississippi State playing tonight. But what do you think about baseball this weekend starting against Louisville in a series at home?
That's definitely it's a big start. Honestly, it seems like both of our teams, our baseball team and the football team we were just talking about, is coming up. Like next season, they're starting with Baylor, which is going to be a tough game, and baseball starting with number 1 Louisville. I think this might be the season that makes or breaks Coach Mike Bianco, just because he's kind of infamous for getting a lot of wins in the season and even sometimes winning the SEC championship. But when it comes to these super regionals or, man, the regional against Tennessee Tech, I will never get over that. But I think that this could be the season that makes or breaks Coach Bianco. So I believe that
you don't think he's on the hot seat?
I think Coach
really
his contract was not renewed.
Wow,
it had not been renewed yet. So I think he could be on the hot seat.
He's been here for this is his 20th season, right? He's been here, I think, for 20 years.
Yeah,
fairly close to it. And it was interesting. I was looking up a few nuggets on baseball, and the last 2 years they've had 40-plus win seasons, which I think is a testament to consistency.
Right.
I wouldn't necessarily say that's a red flag. And they've hosted their NCAA regional 3 of the last 4 seasons. It's funny enough, they actually beat Clemson last year. Clemson came down here, and I saw it was they beat Clemson once, and then I think was it Jacksonville State?
It was Jacksonville.
Jacksonville
State that
they beat them twice.
Right.
And the combined scores for those, it was Ole Miss 41, everyone else 7. So they beat their opponents 41-7 in those 3 games. But you're right, had some troubles down the stretch in recent years.
And I think the reason that Mike Bianco might be on the hot seat is because Ole Miss has been to Omaha in the past. Right. 2014, I think, was the last time that Ole Miss has been to Omaha. But Mississippi State continues to go, if not repetitively, then every other year. Mississippi State is in Omaha. And I think that is one of the main reasons that Mike Bianco could be on the hot seat is because Ole Miss is known, or used to be known as a baseball school. Like Ole Miss would always, especially when we had Drew Pomerantz, when Mike Myers played here,
right.
Even up to the years of Sykes Orvis, who was the first baseman for the Rebels. He was a huge power hitter. Errol Robinson just had a lot of players that made a name for themselves here at Ole Miss, but they could never win the big games. And I hate to say it, but Coach Bianco, he just can't win those super regionals or the it's just hard for him to get to Omaha, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I guess that's, it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because if you let's take Alabama football as a parallel example. If they're not in the playoff every year, it's a major catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they dropped to 12, I think, after Auburn beat them, and everybody was like, oh my God, there's a double-digit number next to Alabama's name because they're not in that top 4. And we'll see how they bounce back. I think they're going to come back with a vengeance.
Yes.
I think Saban is royally PO'd, and I think they're going to come back strong. Personally, I have my doubts about it. And again, we there's so much college football to talk about, even in the offseason. But I think LSU's going to have some issues just with Burrow gone, and there's been a lot of transitions in their staff. Same with what's been going on in Alabama, especially under Saban. But that's interesting. It's almost like for Ole Miss baseball, the success in the past is like preventing you from enjoying the present. Like, even though you're hosting regionals, you're winning 40-plus games, there's definitely people out there that seem to be dissatisfied.
Right, and I think the parallel to Alabama explains it perfectly. Just because, for some reason, because of our past success, because getting to Omaha in the past, and because of having successful seasons, I think that people's hopes are so high, especially because once baseball season runs around and basketball starts to dwindle off, everybody puts their whole heart into Rebel baseball.
Yeah.
I mean, going to the right field, the beer showers, the experience of the Ole Miss baseball field. There's nothing better than going to a game in Swayze on a nice day when it's about 5:30 to 6, sun's setting, it's starting to feel good, and you're just having a good time at Swayze Field. I think just because of the environment, and when people go there, usually they're drinking, student-wise.
Yeah.
And I think that every time they go, obviously drunk students hate to lose. That is their number one hate. Everything else goes out of their mind. The number one thing that they hate the most is losing. At that point.
Yeah.
And so I think when you are so because obviously like the football program, obviously there's a lot of students that go, but at the moment how it's been recently, if you've seen the student section, it hasn't been packed out for football games, especially when it comes to
football has been struggling.
Yeah,
attendance-wise,
especially when it comes to like halftime. Like once halftime hits, that third quarter starts. Man, that it looks scarce in that student section.
I will say it was interesting. I found that Ole Miss actually set an attendance record for baseball in 2019. They averaged 8,988 patrons a game, which is really, I mean, that's impressive. I mean, that's nearly 9,000 people per game. But yeah, I mean, I guess if they tying it back to the conversation we had at the top of the show about what does Lane Kiffin need to do. You got two different dichotomies, right? You got Lane Kiffin, who he has notoriety, maybe for the wrong reasons, but people know who he is. And
Johnny Freshwater.
And people are going to expect him to win, and people are going to expect Ole Miss to compete and recruit well and develop talent. And then you got a guy in Bianco who's been here for 2 decades, overseeing a great stretch of success for Ole Miss baseball. Yet there's a little bit of grumbling. So it's like, where do you... For me, I feel like the longer you coach at the same school, the harder it gets to keep people happy. Because, Kiffin could come in here and he could go 6-6 or 5-7 or even 4-8. And I don't really think people are going to fault him too much, right? Because people understand this is his first year. There's a lot of, moving pieces. If baseball doesn't perform this year, even if they hit where they were last year, like you said earlier, there's still going to be a group of fans that are going to say, well, we need to be improving every year. And I think sometimes it's easier when you're a newer coach than when you're a coach that's been here for, 20 years.
Right. And I think a good comparison would be, like, I believe that the Patriots will let Tom Brady play there as long as he wants to / can. And that's because of the success and what he's given to the organization.
Oh, so you think they do it as a favor to him?
Yeah, I mean, I think
owe him that.
I think that what he's done he's got 6 rings.
Yeah.
And they're like, they have so much faith in Tom Brady, even though they got knocked out first round, the first game of the playoffs they played this year. I think that the Patriots fan base and the organization will let Tom Brady play as long as he wants because they believe, after winning a Super Bowl at 40 years old, he was 40 or 41. After doing that, they have so much faith in him that they'll let him play as long as he wants to / can. But with Coach Bianco, he hasn't brought that sort of proof to the table. If he had won, dare I say, just one World Series, even going to the championship game,
right?
Like Mississippi State has done. And I think that if he had some kind of tangible evidence like that to prove that I've done it before, I can do it again, then he would have some more job security. But
I think my counterpoint to that would be, who are you going to find? Who are you going to hire? Who are you going to hire that is going to elevate an already pretty top tier program? I think you'd be, I think it's a fair statement to say that Ole Miss is definitely in the upper levels of baseball programs, just in terms of the passion for the program. I mean, you look at the students and the fact that they, are all about the baseball program in the spring. You look at the history and the tradition. Who are you gonna find?
I mean, going off of that, I believe that just because Ole Miss is kind of in that upper tier, I think it would be an enticing job.
Sure.
So I think,
but then you're taking a risk, right?
Yeah,
you're taking a
right.
serious gamble, because then you're going to hire somebody, and then maybe you drop off.
That is true, but I think Ole Miss at some point has to take that gamble, because whether or not they want to, 40-win seasons are great.
Right.
I love a 40-win season.
Sure.
If something comes out of that 40-win season.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're just winning 40 games,
right,
and at least an SEC championship. Now I'll give him that he won the SEC championship a couple years back. So I think that definitely helped him keep his job. But after a while, Ole Miss fans after we look so good, that's what's so disappointing is those 40-win seasons,
right,
they don't result in a trip to Omaha. When you show that you are that good throughout the season, even playing in the SEC, which has some pretty good baseball teams, and you're the
Notre Dame.
season.
You're the Notre Dame of the college baseball world. You know what I'm talking about when I say Notre Dame?
Yeah.
You win your games, right? You play your non-conference opponent. They're all technically non-conference, but they're in the ACC. Let's just they have their contract with NBC, but they're in the ACC. They win all their games, and then they get to the postseason, and they just collapse.
Mm-hmm.
They collapse. They have not won a big game since I bet it's probably been. I was going to say BCS era, but I'm failing to come up with a game because they played Alabama in 2012, 2010.
I think that was 2012.
Was it 2012?
I think that was when they had Manti Te'o,
and they got throttled.
Yeah,
42-10.
And they played Clemson.
Yeah,
was that 2 years ago?
That was 2 years ago. I was actually at that game in the Cotton Bowl. That was I think it was 30-3 or 30-6.
Just thrown around.
Yeah, and it's going back to baseball. It's an interesting comparison because, so at Clemson, Jack Leggett was a coach there from '94 to 2015, and Clemson made the World Series, the College World Series 6 times while he was there, which is decent, numbers. Yeah. And he had been there for a long time. The fans liked him, but Clemson ended up firing him in 2015, and they went with Monty Lee, who's still there, and they've had good success under Monty Lee. So. You're right. It can, and Monty Lee was unproven. He didn't have the experience at that kind of program yet, but he's been able to do a lot with Clemson while he's been there for, I think now this will be his 4th year. So maybe in 2 years, if Ole Miss is still kind of stalling, I could see them going to replace. If you mentioned at the end of this season the contract will not be renewed, right? Or it has not been renewed.
It hasn't been renewed. His contract has.
So is his contract up after the end of the year?
It's up after the end of the year.
Oh wow!
And so, if they give him a new contract, that's what the question is.
So more than likely, this contract is going to be negotiated during the season.
Yeah,
right.
That's how it looks.
Wow.
Well,
it's hard to say. Because you don't know. Okay. This weekend, right? They're playing Louisville, number 1 team in the country. Is this weekend's series going to be a good indication of how the rest of the season is going to go? Or do you think that you really can't look at this because it's the first weekend, it's the number 1 team, and it's unrealistic to expect Ole Miss to come out and just knock everyone's socks off? Or should they compete? I think a lot of people would say they should compete.
I think Ole Miss should definitely compete. And this is also the time to kind of figure out if Louisville is the real deal.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the times, like preseason rankings, I don't really have a lot of faith in those.
For sure.
I think that it's nice to kind of think where teams should be at, but I think that the real rankings really start to show after 2 or 3 weeks, how the teams play. So I honestly don't think that Ole Miss should be intimidated by this number 1 ranking, just because there are some playmakers on the Ole Miss baseball squad. Like We have some good hitters. Anthony Servideo has gotten a lot of power, I've been told, over the offseason. During a scrimmage, he hit a home run the other day. Also, Jerrion Ely, he might be in the starting lineup. A football player. He's just an all-around athlete. I think there's a lot of reasons to get excited about the Ole Miss baseball team this year, and I don't think that the team as a whole should be intimidated by that number 1 ranking. And I've said this for the longest time. I think that all of our sports programs need their own psychiatrist, because every time we'll be winning a big game or we'll go against somebody big and we have the talent that we need to win that game.
Yeah.
They just start thinking we're not supposed to win this. And then boom, then it's lost. So that's what I'm saying. We need a psychiatrist to go into each and every team that we have, except for the women's golf team who won the championship during their season. Hats off to them. The rifle team is really good at the moment. I believe they're still number 7, if I'm not mistaken. Our women's track team is number 21 in the country. So they're really good. But I think when it comes to men's basketball, I think we definitely need a psychiatrist to go talk to them, and not bashing these sports programs at all. I'm just saying that it seems like they have this Ole Miss mentality, like the kicker during the Egg Bowl. That's a 35-yard field goal.
It's funny to me, only because I grew up where, and I was just relating it back to my childhood. Clemson was always around subpar. They were about 6-6, and Clemsoning. I don't know if that's a term that you're familiar with, but Clemsoning was a very real thing. It's fortunately the consistency has made that term kind of irrelevant, but for a long time there was almost like this mental block, and you have to. It's a combination. I think it's a combination of coaching and team unity, really, and the guys rallying together and saying, "Look, we can win this game and we can get it done." Now, we want to transition quickly here in the final few minutes of the show to talk about the basketball game tonight. Now, Ole Miss has recently beat South Carolina, who's sitting at 6-4 in the SEC, and they beat Florida.
Yeah, we took down Florida on Saturday.
Who's also 6-4. If they're able to get a win against Mississippi State, you could definitely say that things are trending up.
For sure. Things will definitely be trending up, but I think now is time to wonder whether or not the hole that we dug for ourselves at the beginning of conference play is too deep to crawl out of.
Yeah, 3-7 right now. 3-7.
We started before we won those 2 games, we were 1-7. This is the first time we've won 2 conference games all season. The first conference win that we got was against Georgia, who is at the lower end of the conference rankings. But it's just hard to imagine that we can win so many conference games in order to give us a viable shot at, the NIT.
Well, I was going to say, right now you're sitting at 12-11, so you're essentially 500, and you're right. You've got tough games this week. Mississippi State at home, and then you travel to Kentucky on the road Saturday, and then you have. Was that 2, 4, 6 more SEC games? If they split those, you're right. That would be a tough. Now, if they do well in the SEC tournament, then maybe something opens up for them. I'm not really sure. I do want to mention, though, really quick, just got word that we have a giveaway to announce. That you can check this giveaway out on the Rebel Radio 92.1 Instagram page, and all you've got to do is like the post that they have put up for the giveaway, follow Rebel Radio 92.1 on Instagram, and tag some friends. Simple, easy. Winner's going to get a pair of tickets to tonight's game against Mississippi State. 6 p.m. at the Pavilion. Again, all you've got to do is like the post on Rebel Radio 92.1's Instagram page, follow, tag some friends. Be sure to get out and support the men's basketball team this evening. Okay, 5 minutes left in the show. We're going to transition into a little segment that we've put together here. Jason is going to give us a Price is Right style game. It's Price is Wrong, Price is Right. I'll let you kind of explain the concept here.
So this segment is called The Price is Close Enough.
Okay.
So I will make a hot take about sports. Could be Ole Miss sports, could be national news, and you will tell me, in your opinion, if you think the price is right, the price is wrong, or the price is close enough.
All right.
So just starting off here, this first hot take, I believe that John Rice Plumlee should be moved to the slot position, and Matt Corral should take the starting quarterback position.
Okay. I think the price is wrong. I think the price is wrong here because I was not as impressed with Corral as a leader than Plumlee. I felt like Plumlee was more consistent overall. Now, Plumlee is, what is he? He is they're both sophomores. Both
Yes.
Corral and Plumlee are sophomores. I understand where you're coming from because I think Plumlee is more dynamic, but I feel like Plumlee's charisma and his attitude on the sidelines is better at rallying the guys together. And I'm not a part of the locker room, but I just feel like as a viewer sometimes Corral doesn't do enough to get the guys back in those games where your Auburn, your Texas A&M, your Memphis, like it just didn't feel like Corral was really doing as much as Plumlee, but honestly, I could see that switch. I really could. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I don't think it's an unreasonable claim. Kiffin, as far as we know, has not made an official statement on whether or not he's going to go two quarterback or what.
Yeah, no, he hasn't. But also just seeing John Rice's throwing ability from last season, I believe that, and his speed, his athleticism, jumping over that player against Alabama.
Yeah.
I mean, he is an athlete that we don't want to have to just use at quarterback and just put in at this one position and then put Matt Corral by the wayside.
Right.
So I think that John Rice Plumlee at slot would be a good way to get both of them in the game and make the offense more dangerous because you never know what's going to happen. Could be a double pass, could be a reverse pass. All these things are possible. And one more, let me know. Price is right, price is wrong, price is close enough. Breein Tyree will have more than 25 points tonight against Mississippi State.
Wow. Okay. He's averaging 19 a game, more than 25. I think the price is right there. I think the price is right. I think he has a big game. I think Ole Miss comes. I think their performance the last two games against South Carolina and Florida have really kind of put a spark in for these teams. And I think that they are going to come out inspired, and I think they're going to play really, really well. Well, listen, that's all the time we have. If you want to check out the show further, stay in touch with us on social media at After Review Show. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can follow me there, Jay Smith, or you can follow Jason Price. Connect with us. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you here next week from the Rebel Radio 92.1 studios. Thanks for listening.